Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends of the OR Tambo School of Leadership. Thank you for joining us for yet another exciting public dialogue. As you all know, that this is the space where we get to engage on various topics of national interest. Those who have been with us in our previous dialogues, we have been focusing on the economy, and we had made a commitment that we will soon have a conversation around the question of energy. And we are privileged today to be joined by the Minister of Electricity and Energy to come and have a conversation with us under the theme, Enhancing South Africa's Energy Security to Boost Economic Productivity. I will introduce the Minister shortly, as soon as I foreground this conversation. My name is Kgosientsho, and I'll be the one facilitating today's dialogue. Essentially, this particular important dialogue comes as a result of the previous conversations that we have been having around the economy. We began by talking about the ANC's economic action plan, economic recovery action plan, which was presented by Kgosientsho. Then we had a discussion around heterodox economics, which was led by Dr. Kwesi Mabasa. And then we had a masterclass on SOEs with both Dr. Malusi Gigaba as well as Desmond Golding. And we thought it would be important to engage this conversation around energy before we close this chapter on the economy. Essentially because energy is at the heart of economic growth, but more strongly, it's at the heart of economic productivity. As you all know that in scientific terms, energy is the ability to do work. And without energy, we cannot do any work, you know. So essentially, that's why we thought it's important to have this conversation around energy, enhancing South Africa's energy security. I think you all know that amongst the many challenges that the country has been facing, the issue of energy has been one challenging issue, which we have made great strides in recent years in resolving, particularly after the appointment of the Minister of Electricity and Energy, whom I'm about to introduce. It is therefore important to actually reflect on this journey that we have traversed to actually enhance South Africa's energy security. But there are also other exciting plans in the pipeline when you engage the integrated resource plan, which I'm sure the Minister will touch on during his presentation. But most importantly, is for us to understand what is the ANC's thinking around energy security, and what are the plans to actually put us at a more secure place, which in turn should be able to enhance our economic productivity, as well as the issue of investments, because we know that investors, whenever they come into the country to want to invest, part of the things that they want to be guaranteed on is the issue of energy security. So that it's within that context that we're having today's conversation, and we would like to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. Get your pens and notepads ready, as the Minister is about to to come on the platform and engage us on this important matter. So I'm just going to read his bio quickly, and then I'll call him to present. I'll be flighting his presentation from my side. So the person who will be taking us through today's conversation is Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who is the current Minister of Electricity and Energy in our republic, that is South Africa. In the 6th administration, he served as the Minister of Electricity from March 2023. Dr. Ramokgopa served as the Mayor of Tshwane in the capital city of South Africa from 2010 to 2016, and as a member of the Executive Council in the Gauteng provincial government in 2019. His background is in civil engineering by training, and Dr. Ramokgopa entered formal politics as a ward councillor from the African National Congress in Tshwane between 2000 and 2005. After several years running public and private entities, he returned to politics in November 2010 when he was elected as the mayor of Tshwane in the capital city of South Africa. Dr. Ramokgopa was also the regional chairperson of the ANC branch in Tshwane, a position he held up until 2018. So he was the regional chairperson in Tshwane, not at a branch level, at a regional level. I could go on and on. This is quite a long bio, so I'll leave it at that, and I hope the minister will pardon me for not going through all of it. Minister, the platform is yours.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Comrade Kgosientsho, and good evening to you and comrades on the call. And thank you for occasioning this conversation. And I think that your introductory remarks are opposite to this conversation. Our relationship with energy and electricity has been on how we were encountering load shedding. So it has denied us the opportunity to initiate a comprehensive conversation on trying to understand the political economy of energy and its contribution to the economic recovery effort. So I do welcome this opportunity. And I thought that it will be important that I share with you in a very succinct manner the historic evolution of the South African energy complex and its contribution to the industrialization of the country. As you know, that we are the most industrialized country now on the continent, a position that seemed unassailable hitherto. But of course, with the underperformance of the electricity sector and also the inefficiencies on the logistics side, I think there will be other jurisdictions on the continent that will be threatening our position as the most industrialized country on the continent. So I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide just to situate the conversation as we have indicated. Yeah, if you proceed to the next substantive slide, Kgosientsho. Yeah, thanks. So what this slide attempts to do is to try and indicate that there is a relationship between per capita electricity consumption and GDP growth, and also the relationship does exist between per capita electricity consumption and Human Development Index. And this is the political economy that I referred to. So what you see on the left-hand side, that a graph, so you have on your x-axis your GDP, and on your y-axis per capita electricity consumption. What this is revealing is that those countries that are seeing elevated levels of GDP growth, they also have the highest electricity per capita consumption. So what it means is that economy-rich countries are not energy poor, and in the instance are not electricity poor. And you can see the cluster on your bottom left there. It's mainly your African and some of the South Asian countries. where you see that the levels of penetration or access are significantly lower, and also GDP is not at the levels that are desired. And if you move to your right, what that does, it attempts to show the relationship between Human Development Index and electricity per capita consumption. So on your x-axis is so the horizontal, if you like, it's your HDI, and also on your y-axis is per capita electricity consumption, residential consumption. Again, that trend shows itself. So you can see that on your bottom left, so you have a lower Human Development Index, lower per capita consumption. You have a concentration of the blue, and the blue dots there, it's African countries. And then on your extreme right, going to the top, what you have there is a European countries and some of the countries in Oceania. So what these two graphs attempts to say is that there's a relationship of direct proportionality. What do I mean by that? The higher the electricity consumption, the higher the GDP. The higher the electricity consumption, the higher the Human Development Index. I'm very careful in what I'm saying. I'm saying is a relationship of direct proportionality. I didn't argue that there is a relationship of causality. But you will see as I expand on our experiences on in South Africa, I can arrive at that conclusion, and that conclusion will be substantiated. And that's why I make the point that it's important that we have an appreciation that energy, and once you convert it into electricity, has got an impact, a positive impact on GDP growth, on economic growth. And just to borrow on what Kgosientsho was saying, when the lights are on, the people get to work. So that's just to simplify a very complex relationship between electricity and GDP. If we have to go to the next slide, Kgosientsho, what the next slide attempts to do is to situate South Africa's energy electricity landscape within a global environment. But first, just on your left, again, is to show the levels of percentage of access. So what you and I refer to as universal access, and I'll expand on universal access, simply meaning that households in those countries are connected to the grid and or have some form of distributed electricity generation that allows them to meet their electricity needs. And it also follows that the industry are also supported. So what does the map of the world show you on your left? Just to explain the legend there. So essentially what you see, so what is in green, I'm sorry about this, it's supposed to be in blue, that you have 100% connectivity. So, you can see that North America, main parts of Europe, Australia, and also parts of South America, Brazil, to be very specific. That green, like I said, is supposed to be blue. So it shows you the levels of universal access. And then when you come to the African continent, you can see that we are hovering anything between 50% and 99% of electricity connectivity. And really that South Africa is now, as I speak to you, at 93% of connectivity, that is universal access. In absolute number of people, 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa don't have access to electricity. Put that into context, we're a population of 1.4 billion people on the continent. And then if I just isolate just sub-Sahara alone, 600 million people don't have access to electricity. And in fact, the numbers get worse if you had to think of what you call clean cooking. So 1 billion people on the continent do not have access to clean cooking. So what do they use when they want to meet their cooking needs? They use paraffin, they use wood, or they use coal. You remember, some of you who are my age and older, that we used to have those stoves at home, and coal stoves. They perform multiple functions. So During winter, we'll assemble around the stove because it provides heating. And then it also provides an opportunity for cooking, and it also provides a opportunity for, of course, for bathing. We heat the water for bathing purposes. So you can see, so the point we're making is that 1 billion people of the 1.4 billion people don't have access to clean cooking, and then 600 million people don't have access to electricity. That is in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm not sure if you can see the dots there. Of the top 20 countries that they've got the access deficit, access in relation to deficit of access to electricity, 16 of them are located on the continent. I'm not sure if you can see the dots there. And about 4 of them are somewhere there in Southeast Asia. So the point is that just reinforcing the message I was making earlier on, that there's a relationship between electricity access and GDP growth, electricity access and consumption, electricity consumption and human development index. You can see there's a splinters of red there. So there are countries in sub-Saharan Africa whose penetration is less than 10%. So those countries barely have an economy to speak of, because without the lights on, we are not able to create the jobs. And then the narrative on the right then begins to put the South African energy electricity complex into a context that can be better understood. So South Africa represents 5% of the total population on Sub-Sahara, and yet we account for 50% of its installed capacity. And I'm going to share with you later the RP that Kgosientsho referred to. We want to increase our installed capacity 3 times. So South Africa will get to a stage once we have successfully implemented the RP, will account for over 60% of the total electricity production or installed capacity on the continent. But there's also another dimension that it also plays itself out in the country, is that if you had to do a geographic computation of where is these areas where people don't have access, they are mainly located in rural hinterland. And that's a function of a number of things, including, amongst others, from a technical point of view, the cost of connectivity, because the densities in the rural areas it's smaller, so the unit cost of connecting people is very expensive, and they are far away from some of the backbone infrastructure, and I'm talking about the transmission line. So the cost of connecting, because we have to travel longer distances to get to a household, it also increases the cost of a connection. And then when you go to areas like KZN, where the topography can be very challenging, mountainous and the like, then it gets even more costly for you to connect people in the rural areas. So there are geographic inequities in relation to energy access in the country. And I'll say 1 or 2 things about it. So what that means is that the people in the rural hinterland are not enjoying the dividends of the victory of the democratic project from a point of view of universal access. And then we know a new dimension that is coming up. It's a topical issue in the country, is about the cost of electricity. It's increasingly becoming unaffordable. But I'm going to make a statement that on the surface appears to be problematic in the context of the challenges that households are facing and also industry. You will see that South Africa ranks one of in the top 5 least expensive electricity in the world. Cost of electricity, we are in the top 5 as the cheapest to use that weight. Of course, it's problematic because you and I are experiencing significant difficulties in relation to the price of electricity. But what we know is that the ability to pay of households is such that the households are prepared to pay anything between 10 and 50% of their income for purposes of energy. Of course, that number becomes disproportionate when you look at the low end of the income band because 15 to 10% of that can be very significant as a share of their disposable income. Of course, for the middle class and the more affluent, it's not as significant, and I'm not suggesting that it's not punishing. So that's the point I thought I should make. And then if we go to the next slide, I'm beginning to map the historic foundations of the South African political economy of energy. And I think that there has to be an honest encounter amongst ourselves on where things went wrong. And I want to trace it back to how we got to a stage of producing the electricity at the levels that we do. So our relationship with the energy system is rooted in what I refer to as the logic of colonial extraction. So just to share with comrades on the call is that when the powers that be decided that we need to have our ability to generate electricity, and of course we then formed ESCOM, and I'll share one or two things about the role and place of ESCOM in the industrialization of the country, and of course its dominance on the energy complex. Electricity was not a public good. So when they conceived of electricity, it was a private good. So what this meant is that you had an intersection, or if you like, an alliance of state technocrats and capital that produce growth without inclusion. And that's what I refer to as the issues of colonial extraction. And really, this was precipitated by the discovery of a diamond in Kimberley in 1867, and then gold in what was then the Witwatersrand in 1886. And what this the colonial powers did was to they convert these minerals or deposit rather into a resource so they can commercially mine it, and then they wanted to sell it to the international markets because there was no sufficient domestic demand. So they were really providing or mining it for export purposes. And that's why you will see when I show you later that what we call Transnet was created before ESCOM, because even before the era of mechanization, people could use their hands, they could use spade, they could use shovel and pick to really mine this diamond. And then they wanted to transport it out of the country. And that's why the colonial power started by building the freight logistics so that we can export this out of the country. And then a point not to be missed is that coal became the mineral foundation of industrial capitalism in the country. And of course, we know what we now call townships and the rural areas. They were really labor reserves. And this allowed the migrant labor system, which was born on the back of this foundation of coal, which supported the industrialization of our country. So the discovery of cheap coal in the northeastern part of the country, what you and I refer to as Mpumalanga today, and then you design the power stations, the turbine to take the quality of that coal, you burn it and convert it into electricity. So the coal is our primary energy, and through a mechanical process and chemical process, you convert it into electricity. And that's why, and then you want to avoid the electricity traveling long distances, and that's why your load centers, where electricity is consumed, is in Gauteng, Vereeniging, ESCOWAS in this part of the world, because it has to be closer to where electricity is generated so that you are able to undermine long distances of the electrons to travel. Because if you have long distances, you are going to suffer what we call technical losses. And that's why, as I speak to you today, 72% of electricity consumption is in Gauteng going to the north. It was a deliberate exercise. And then in 1923, it's a very, very important moment is in the history of South Africa. Then you have what at the time they called the Electricity Supply Commission, which later evolved into what you and I today refer to as ESCOM. So what's the bigger point I'm making here? It's a political point. And it's a critique of the architects of apartheid. They were very deliberate, they were very systematic in what they wanted to achieve. It will become clearer in the next slide. But the point I want to register here is what is in green. I want to read it that the apartheid hardwired inequality into the grid. So power lines served mines and white suburbs, whilst black townships and rural villages were kept in darkness. So it was a deliberate political strategy. So you first, like I said, it was a private good really to ensure that you engineer a resurgence or an emergence, not resurgence, of South Africa's industrial capacity on the back of abundant coal, and then of course the mines and were saved by that. So when you moved away from manual mining into mechanization, you really needed electricity. But it also served another purpose. The excess electricity generated then was reticulated to wide areas, and with the lights on, they were able to improve their quality of life, and black people were left behind. So that's the foundation of South Africa's political economy of energy. And you can see it's rooted in apartheid. Just the thesis of apartheid, it's exactly that. Then comes the pivot, the 1994, the liquidation of a system that is universally categorized as a crime against humanity and the victory of the democratic project. And then what did the democratic government say? It says that we want to achieve a universal access. So the RDP makes that the articulation that electrification will be a cornerstone of social policy. So if you come to think of it, you see that formulation. It's important that we read that detail. So it says as a cornerstone of social policy. So the interaction in our relationship with universal access was to ensure that we are able to address those disparities that were defined along color lines. Remember earlier on I said access was to white people, white suburbs had access to electricity, the Africans were excluded. So we're trying to resolve that question. We didn't use electricity to undermine the structural foundations of the apartheid economy, and I'll make that point earlier on. So our relationship was at the level of social policy without necessarily undermining, if you like, the production structure of apartheid. So that remained unchanged. And we didn't use electricity as an instrument to change that. And I'll show you how you can use electricity to change that. And of course, we've made major strides from 36% levels of penetration. We reached 70% by 2004. As I speak to you now, we're at 93%. And then gear came. So what's the significance of gear? So of course, in the context of the fiscal restraints, there were cuts on infrastructure investment. So the gross fixed capital formation, what essentially is the proxy for investment, went south, and we know there's a relationship between gross fixed capital formation and GDP. And in fact, the National Development Plan 2012 makes this articulation in the most compelling fashion. So it says that for us to achieve the aspirational targets of the NDP by 2030, the economy needs to grow on average 5.5% year on year, and significantly, it says, amongst others, the gross fixed capital formation should be 30% of the country's GDP. So what GEA did, of course, the NDP comes much later, but when we're doing this haircuts, we're shaving expenditure. Infrastructure, because it's a discretionary expenditure, was the first casualty. What does that mean? That means that we're investing less and less in the upkeep, maintenance, and expansion of the installed capacity. So what we did was we deferred maintenance. There was under recovery in relation to what's collected from electricity revenue, because what we did was to freeze the tariffs, and of course tariffs did not keep up. So essentially what we had was a tariff structure that was not cost reflective. And much later you'll see then we tried to keep up with that tariff structure. And that's why you've seen that the tariffs have increased between 2007 and 2024 by 937%, whilst inflation grew by 155%. It's because we wanted to keep up, because during the 1996 at the gear period, we said we are freezing the tariffs. And then the tariffs did not grow at that rate. And then they had to be accelerated during that window of about 17 years. And then the other thing that is significant before I leave this slide is this part you'll see on your bottom right. From 1999 to 2004, electricity demand rose by 4% each year, whilst capacity stood still. So what we then did was the economy was growing. We'll show that there's a relationship between, I've made that point, but I'll show you later, the correlation between energy, electricity that is sent out, that is what the amount of electricity that we are producing, and economic growth. During the golden years of economic growth of the post-apartheid era, the period 2004 to about 2007, we have seen the highest amount of electricity being dispatched, and that correlated with the period of a phenomenal economic growth. But we're not building new power stations for the future. And that led to the hurried decision to build Medupi and Kusile. And then that came with its own design flaws. It resulted in exceeding the budget, so over expenditure there. So you know that we have exceeded our initial budget by over 150 billion rand on those two build programs. It can be put down to the speed with which we decided to build this power station. And these now are in the top 3 biggest power stations per unit. So the traditional method of constructing a unit at the power station was anything between 400 and 600 megawatts. We are the first one to take it to 800 megawatts per unit. I think there's 1 or 2 countries that came on board. So essentially, we designed something that never existed before. And as a result of that, we committed technical mistakes, and those proved to be costly. There were cost overruns, and those cost overruns must find expression in the tariff. So a big part of this tariff has to do with those cost overruns, because in the formula of the tariff, there's your return on asset, and that's the penalty we're paying. So, and then the next slide really, if we were to go, we could go to the next slide. So this is the point I was making about, I had made the point about the bottom slide, that the tariffs have increased 937% over that period 2000 to 2024, whilst inflation has increased 155%. That relationship is important because ideally you want it to increase at the same rate as inflation, or not too far off inflation, almost like inflation index. Because once we get to that stage where there's a predictable relationship between electricity price increase and inflation, then you get to what we call a price path. So if an investor says, I want to invest in South Africa, and the investment or the industry he or she is investing in is electricity intensive, because we have determined a price path, this person will know that in the next 10 years, I'll be paying so much. And then they're able to do their computation on the return of investments before they make the investment decision. But otherwise, now it's erratic. We have been coming 18%, 22%, 12%, 15%. So the investor just doesn't know, including the household, what is the true cost of electricity. So we wanted to get closer to what inflation is. So it has increased by about 6 times the inflation increases. And then the graph on the top makes the point I made earlier on. So if you see GDP growth, that period that I was referring to, 2005, 2007, you can see the gradient of the red line is a bit steeper there. It means that the GDP was growing faster than at any other period. But also what you are seeing is that the electricity sent out, the green there, has begun to come down. Yes, that green comes down then. It doesn't follow the growth in GDP. And also what I refer to as electricity intensity, the unit amount of electricity to support the economic growth. And so when it comes down, it illustrates efficiency. But in this instance, the blue is not the efficiency. And I'll explain to you what that blue is. But the point we're making is that through 1990 and early 2000, the GDP and electricity supply, they rose together. So you can see that the red and the green, they are going together. And then the break comes, in that period, 2007. That's where the break comes. So remember earlier on, I made the point about some of the policy decisions that we have made. And then we're beginning to see that electricity intensity is collapsing. The blue is also coming down. And I make the point, this is not efficiency. It's a system that is under strain. It's as a result of that deferred maintenance. Remember the point I made earlier on, the stalled investments, the delays in the new build program. We are paying the price today. So the issue of load shedding, you can trace it back to the policy decisions and the choices we have made as an ANC-led government. Of course, it gets to be intensified by issues of state capture. I'm not understating that. It's a significant part, but I'm making the point that this problem is a systematic one as a result of the policy choices we have made. And of course, state capture was very opportunistic and went in and just sharpened, or rather exacerbated the crisis that we're experiencing. And I make the point that the GDP climbs whilst electricity supply flattens. And really this talks to the structural fragility or at the heart of South Africa's developmental model. What is the point I'm making? We're advocating this developmental state. Of course, there are various colors of what this looks like, but essentially the state taking the lead to ensure sustained and inclusive growth that is equitably distributed over a period of time. So we're advocating for that. We want a 2 to 3% GDP growth, but I'm saying that it's not supported by an electricity and energy policy that's going to lead it, not necessarily anchor it. So the lights must be on first, then investments will come. Investments don't come and the lights are switched on. So every time they install, capacity must lead the way going into the future. Let's go to the next slide. So the next slide here, comrade, it talks to issues that are going to be unpalatable to some of you. And really, this is the brutal truth. And it's a brutal truth about how the pioneers and the architect of apartheid really said and thought through what it will take for them to build an industrial complex in the country. They made three major decisions. The first one, you remember I told you about the discovery of diamond, then the discovery of gold, diamond in Kimberley, followed by the discovery of gold. There was no sufficient market. They were really servicing the external market. So what did they decide to do? They said, no, we're going to establish what today you and I refer to as Transnet, so that we get these minerals out. They'll be beneficiated in those jurisdictions because ours was a relationship with colonial extraction. They decided that that's what we are going to do. Then they formed Transnet in 1910. And then with mechanization coming in, they realized then there's something else that we need. For us to be competitive, to be more efficient, and essentially a bit more safer in how we mine these things. And as the gold mines were now going deeper and becoming more complex and requires mechanization, they thought, oh, then we need electricity. And then they formed ESCOM. And I remember I made the point earlier on that the ESCOM was really meant for, was not a public good, but for private interest. That intersection of state bureaucrats and also capital for purposes of growth, really extraction, that is not inclusive. Then they decided, okay, we need this ESCOM. And then they said, okay, for us to build an industrial complex, what are some of the biggest input costs? They arrived at the point that for anything to build a road, to build bridges, to build towers, to build office complex, you mentioned them, to build industries, I need steel. In 1928, they make a decision that no, we're establishing ISCO. So these are what I call the first two are the foundational network industries. And then there's the ISCO really is on the supply side. So they were very deliberate. Am I glorifying apartheid? No. I'm simply making the point that you cannot fault how they thought about constructing this economy. What are the challenges that are facing us, that are undermining our growth? So look at 2023. The growth, we are barely growing. The last time we've seen growth upwards of 4% was during that golden period that I referred to. What are the two structural constraints to this growth? It's Eskom and Transnet. And then what is the other casualty of this? Because you are not building anything, because your gross fixed capital formation is lower, it's at 14.9%, as opposed to the 30% relative to GDP, that is, then the supply side is finding difficulty. There is no market, so there are fixed costs associated with providing this steel, but I can't sell it at the rate because the economy is not growing. Then now, what is a mutation of ISCO, which is AMSA, is closing down. And then I want to show you the statistics. So the first two columns is to show you that what leadership can do and thinking carefully around what are the drivers of your economy. So leave the fact that it's an apartheid government. Just accept that there was leadership provided in understanding how this economy must grow. And then look at when we experience this phenomenal growth. What was the send out? Eskom was the installed capacity is 40 gigawatts, and then we're sending out during the peak. The highest peak was 36,200 megawatts. And then look at what's happening in 2000. We are at lower, we're 8,000 megawatts lower. Look at the availability. Look, forget the installed capacity for now. So it means that we're producing more electricity. You are producing more electricity because there's more demand. So it means that the economy is a machine. It's a well-oiled machine is running. It's very thirsty for electricity. And that's why you need to produce this electricity. That out of the 40,000 that we installed, we're giving the economy 36,000. We haven't installed 46,000 megawatts, but the economy at any given, at its peak, it needs 28,000 megawatts. Now you know then the economy is not performing. Then the other metric to use is the port throughput on the yellow side, 260 to 270 million tons. This is 2006. Today we are at 190, 2002, 190 to 200 million tons. Comrade Barbara is lifting that. I think now we're at 240 or so. But we are nowhere close to what was the situation about 20 years ago. You would have expected that over 20 years, the port throughput should be going up because we are mining more efficiently. We found more markets. We are becoming more competitive. No, we've been going down. And then look at ISCO. Whether we call it AMSA and the like. 2006, 2001, is got 6.7 million tons. 2006, 6.1. Today, our output has shrunk by half. So if you are not producing steel, you are not building anything. So that's the point I'm making. And that's why GDP 2007, 5.4, GDP today, 0.6. These are our constraints. So I'm just saying that just an appreciation of what this means will be important. Now let me attempt to answer how we can resolve this. So I thought that I must spend a bit of time explaining, sharing with you the problem statement and the historic evolution, because I think we have an intellectual duty not to be acontextual in how these things have evolved. We're not encountering load shedding now because people stole. Yes, people stole. They must be arrested. We got load shedding, but I've shown you that in fact it's a systematic, the choices that we've made. It's born out of those policy choices. And I'm saying that we can go back as far as even 1996, and it becomes more pronounced in 2007. That's the argument I'm making. And I'm showing you that as a result of an economy that's not performing, and the input side, the supply side has also shrunk, and as a result of that, people are out of employment. And I've shown you that the inefficiencies is electricity and logistics, and that's why the economy is not performing. So that's the point I was making. So in making the point here, since we're making the point that energy is at the center of politics and production. So if you look at the political economy of electricity, it has been weaponized. So you can see the war in Ukraine. So the dominant party there, what did he do when the war started? You just curtail the supply of gas to some of the European countries. So that's the weaponization I'm referring to. The second one is that is an instrument of trade. So the introduction of carbon border adjustment in Europe, they will argue that it has to do with their emissions reduction targets as codified in their national determined contribution. I'm arguing that it's a trade instrument. And then now we also know that it's an instrument for political diplomacy. We can come and help you, this country, that country, but you must buy the gas from us. You must get the LNG from us. We must be the ones who must build the terminal, the receiving terminal, and the regasification. Otherwise, we are not going to be on your side. So it's an instrument of political diplomacy. So our relationship with this has been to reduce it just to load shedding for obvious reasons. And I don't think that we've fully exploited it. So it's at the center of politics and production. That's the point I'm making. I'm making the point that the ESCOM should continue to be the mainstay of the South African energy product, electricity production. So we know we have liberalized, the reform agenda is irreversible, we accept, countries are going that route. Don't de-risk yourself from a monopoly. If a monopoly fails, it drags you with it. We have seen during load shedding, it's important to introduce a competition, but you need the backstop. When all else fails, someone must come. You need an insurance. And that's what ESCOM is an insurance. Go to all the, or not all, most of these jurisdictions, they've got state-owned enterprise that is anchoring the economy of that country from an electricity supply point of view. So we can't advocate for the withering away of ESCOM. And they also know, you can see they're pulling up their socks. Major announcements will come. I don't want to preempt them. We're just going through governance processes. We are repositioning it to be that anchor, to be the battery of the South African economy and play a much bigger, significant role than how it was conceptualized before. So it's a public good, but also performs an economic function, and it's going to help us to temper with the alter the fundamental the economic relations of society. ESCOM is going to help us to do that. We need to address the issues of tariff. I'll come back to that, and also issues of energy poverty, like I said, the energy poverty and the fractured social contract. There's 1.6 million households. If you assume 5 people per household, then really you're talking about 8 million people who don't have access to electricity today. It's an indictment to the victory of the democratic project. So it's up to us to accelerate that. And as President Beki said, sorry, I just said Beki, I meant President Beki has said it, when the lights go out, confidence in the state erodes with these lights that are going out. So it's important that we are able to build on that going forward. And then we need to ensure that energy is a battleground for transformation. You see, we're doing transmission expansion. We're adding new capacity to the grid. Now, we've made, if you look at the bid windows, we've generated an additional 7,900 megawatts from private developers, but there's no real industry that we have built. There's no single black player who can stand on his or her own and build and bid for the next bid windows. They are always accompanying others. They are accompanying the ESCOM equivalent of European countries. So it's important that we are deliberate in this intervention, and I'll share with you what that intervention is. And as I move towards the close, let's go to the next slide. I'm expanding on this argument I'm making of South Africa's energy sector as a battleground where global, national, and factional interests collide. So if you look, so this is I'm contrasting what the orientation of particular regions is about. So if you look at the global north, they are shaping the agenda for transition. And that agenda first takes care of their own internal dynamics, and then they agitate outside what must be the position taken by the rest of the world. So it's about us adopting their technology, making sure that that which they produce, which anchors the decarbonization agenda, we get to buy from them. So it's a decarbonization agenda, but it's got other interests. So it's not a neutral conversation. It's a deeply ideological conversation, this decarbonization issue. So what does private capital? It wants to be as profitable as possible. There's nothing new there. And then what they will tell you is that in some instances, some of them, no, leave coal, just go to renewables. And in renewables, I'm talking PV and wind. But we know that nuclear is a big part of the conversation. But that gets to be excluded in the conversation. But fortunately, in the taxonomy of what constitutes green, we have accepted that nuclear is a big part of that. And then you also have the fact that the states are at the center of this articulation. And that's why I'm arguing that in the context of the reform, the state must never be displaced. The state must set the agenda. The state must say, this is the mix, this is how the mix will look like, and this is where the regions that are going to give us this are going to provide these energy sources. The state is not a neutral player. The state takes a position and seeks to influence the players in that space in its direction. Of course, you use various tactics to ensure that this degree of alignment without antagonizing and being hostile is important. The mines, the smelters have got their own agenda. Reduce the input cost. They must maximize their benefit. And of course, they'll tell you that they are going to protect the jobs. And of course, the unions will always protect the interest of their members if they think that the reform agenda threatens the status of their members, then it's going to be resisted at all costs. The poor, all they want is a transition from darkness to light. So they're uninterested around what's the energy source that is giving them, but it's just that transition from darkness to light, and it must be affordable. And the last ones are the rent seekers, those who don't bring any value. In fact, theirs is value subtraction. All they bring is their connection to ministers and that. I know so and so, then I can put the deal together, undermining this agenda. When genuine entrepreneurs are excluded because they happen not to know the actors in the space. I think they are undermining this transformation agenda. They're the ones who are soiling what we call BE, Black economic empowerment, affirmative action, and all of that. Nothing wrong with those policies, but it's some of these actors that are undermining this exercise that we're doing. And then the next slide, I'll really say in 2 slides, I'll share with you the interventions we're making. If you go to the next slide. So what do we know, comrades, is that the industrialization of the country was on the back of fossil fuels. Remember the story I shared with you around coal. And then it plateaued, and then it deindustrialized. And that's why you see the challenges with AMSA, the ports throughput, I shared with you, Transnet, issues of load shedding led to a deindustrialization. And then now what we want to do is to reindustrialize on the back of decarbonization. What do we know? We know that solar energy is going to increase 2.5-fold by 2040. We know that wind energy is going to increase 2.7 times by 2040. We know that EVs, electric vehicles, and battery storage is going to increase 29 times by 2040. Then something needs to minerals are required to produce the components that are being used for solar PV, for electrolyzers, for the batteries, for the wind towers, for the magnets that are in this these towers. What are those? It's copper, silicon, and all of that. Manganese. A big part of these are found in our country. And that's why Minister Comrade Goede, in his other capacity, has come with a critical mineral strategy. So we know what the demand looks like. And we know that we've got endowments of these minerals. And we know that we can beneficiate them as long as we resolve the price of electricity and water is made available. Then you resolve the issue of unemployment, you resolve the issue of skills going forward. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm really sharing with you what these opportunities look like. If we go to the next slide, and maybe jump it, let's go to the next one I want to make, this one. So the previous one. So what we know, comrades, is that I'm using the example of ferrochrome industry. So we know that there's been a loss of capacity with regards to the smelters being closed. we have lost 400,000 tons of capacity because smelters are closed. Why are smelters closing? Is because the cost of electricity is prohibitive. But we know we're sitting on 70% of the global chromite reserve, which is a primary mineral that from which we are able to get this chrome and we are able to beneficiate. So we're sitting with the resource. So what's beating us is the price of electricity. And we know that we're charging them the unit cost 2 rand 6 cents per kilowatt hour. And then if you have to go to China, Mongolia, they charge 73 cents kilowatt hour. So they are getting they are paying a third, 2/3 cheaper than what they can pay here in South Africa if you are to beneficiate in China and Mongolia. So if 45% of your input cost is 2/3 cheaper in another jurisdiction, you go to that jurisdiction. And that's why we have lost that capacity of smelter. We know that when you export raw chrome, you recover, it's sold for 150 tons, for $150 per ton. If we were to beneficiate, is $1,100 US per ton. So it means that Minister Godongwana can collect more if we are able to beneficiate here at home. Now we've created the jobs, direct jobs, induced jobs. Then you are addressing another problem of the structural configuration of the South African economy. And this is the intervention that we are making. If you go to the next slide, we said that the intervention, it must be around how we deal with the electricity pricing, so the tariff. So I must say to you that the conversations are continuing. We are at an advanced stage with a lot of these smelters. Cabinet took a decision, find a dispensation in addition to the negotiated pricing arrangement to make this intervention. And then the issues around the issues of export tax should be explored, and Comrade Parks is doing exactly that. So that's the interventions that we are making. On the electricity price, we think that we'll find each other. Once we find each other, the smelters must remain open, and those that are closed should be open. And then we also are generating additional electricity so we can supply to them. And that's how we are going to use electricity as a lever to get the economy going. Let me just do the next 2 slides, Comrade. Let's jump this one. I've spoken a lot. I just need to go to the next slide as a last. Yeah. So, comrades, this is a configuration of the South African energy mix. So you can see coal is 58% of the installed capacity. But if we are to do a computation of what gets to be supplied from coal, so what is dispatched by coal is 84%. So really the true number is 84% of our electricity demand is met by coal. And you can see the share of others, rooftop solar, nuclear, wind, and also hydro that's coming from Mozambique. So we introduced the RP, which is the next slide. We're saying that we are going to tamper with this mix. So we're going to see the next slide that we're going to have by 2039, 5.2 gigawatts of nuclear. So we're proceeding with the nuclear program. You're going to see an exponential rise of solar and PV. They are going now to install another 25 gigawatts of solar, 34 gigawatts of wind. We'll do between now and 2030, 6 gigawatts of gas. And then by 2039, that number will be 16 gigawatts, and then storage and distribution. So this is a major intervention. It's a 2.2 trillion rands investment that we are making. And that's why we're saying we must use this program to tamper with the economic relations of society and ensure that we engender greater levels of Black participation on the new generation side. So we're having conversations with the DBSA and IDC so that they create a fund that can support the participation of Black players in this build program as we do the bid windows. And this is how we're going to get the economy going. I did say that a lot of the minerals that go into the manufacturing of solar components that are associated with solar and wind are found in the country and aligned with the critical mineral strategy that Comrade Gwede presented in his other deployment, and the fact that we must beneficiate. Then we have an industry to talk about going forward. The rest really, Comrade, is a detail what we are doing with transmission and the like. But I'm going to end it here just to say that we had understated the role and place of energy and its conversion to electricity. We shouldn't miss that opportunity. And in that way, we'll bring new life into the South African economy. Thanks, Kate. I'll leave it here. And we had understated the role and place of energy and its conversion to electricity. We shouldn't miss that opportunity. And in that way, we'll bring new life into the South African economy. Thanks, Kate. I'll leave it here.
Thank you very much, Minister. That was really a mouthful. It was really a mouthful. And thank you very much for not only taking us through the technical processes, but also appreciating that as Marxist-Leninists, we are materialists, and therefore the historical context of everything is always important. But I think also bringing the politics of it, I think that's very important, because sometimes, when we have these conversations around technical issues, we tend to forget that there's always politics, and we are a political movement. We must concern ourselves with the politics of things so that our response is adequate and allows us to do the necessary introspection. And in trying to sum up quickly what you said before we allow for an engagement, as you were speaking, I could not help but go to this quote by Professor Asgard from the Modeling Institute, where he made a presentation showing 10 factors around the economy. And he makes this bold conclusion, which I think resonates with your conclusion as well, that when we connect these 10 threads, from global integration to class formation, a clear picture emerges. South Africa's transition achieved macro stability and elite inclusion, but without altering the deep structures of inequality and dependent development. The question that remains is whether a truly developmental path can still emerge, one that moves beyond managing inequality to transforming the foundations that reproduce it. And I think towards the end, you were actually responding to that question, that indeed that developmental path exists, but it requires us to be very focused, to be very alert. I think when you make the point that South Africa is the battleground for various interests, ranging from global interest to internal factional interests, as well as sectorial interests. You are making the point that we should not lose sight of the debate around the political economy of energy, so that at the end of the day, we can reassert the power of the state to actually drive us towards a progressive path in terms of building that energy security. You've made a lot of points, Minister. I think I filled 2 pages of my notepad as you were speaking. So I won't pick on all of these issues, but I think the first point that you start with in showing us, or in making the contention that there exists a positive correlation between income growth, overall development, including human development, and energy availability. I think it's a very important point. There's a slide that showed that out of the top 20 countries that have access deficit to energy, that is electricity, 16 of those are on the African continent. And it's very hard to reconcile with that truth, because we remain a resource-rich continent, but still very poor. And when we bring now the point that you made, that there exists a positive correlation between development and energy availability, it makes sense why today we're still trapped in the poverty trap, even as we have a lot of resources. And I think what's worrying out of that picture is that most of those 16 countries that are on the continent, if you look at that map, most of them are in conflict-ridden areas. So we can safely deduce that if we don't have energy, we can't even have peace. We can't even begin to talk about peace if we don't have the energy to activate economic productivity to improve people's lives. I appreciate the historical foundations you took us through. And I appreciate that in your historical analysis, you also make the point that we have made some certain policy choices that have brought us where we are. And sometimes we don't talk about the impact of those policy choices, and I think it's a conversation that we need to have so that when we move forward, we say, what are the mistakes that we should avoid? What should we be alert to? Even when you see green shoots, you need to ask deeper questions. Are these green shoots sustainable? Or are they there for out of temporal factors that drive that? I mean, when you look at those glory years, people often argue that the growth that you saw there was a bit superficial because it was out of the commodity boom, So I think you are saying to us that we should not just be excited whenever we see green shoots, but we should dig deeper to ensure that those are sustainable. You make the point that Transnet and Eskom remain amongst the biggest constraining factors in terms of our economic productivity. And we need to work very hard to get those going if we are to improve the situation. So I think you made very good points, and I'll invite engagements, and I'll just lay a couple of rules of engagements. The rules are simple. Your device has to be named accordingly, so that we know who's speaking. So if your profile is named in a funny way, we'll not note your hand. But you also have 2 minutes to make your contribution. I know that this is a technical conversation, and it's a conversation that is close to our hearts. We have suffered from load shedding. Some of us are still suffering from load reductions. But there's also ideological underpinnings to these conversations, which I think are important. And I thank the minister for actually bringing that lens or that paradigm to the conversation. But I plead with you, comrades, let's stick to time so that we can get as many people conversing. Thank you for all the comments that have been going in the chat room. So I'll start with Comrade Sandile. I'll ask you to unmute. You will unmute, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Comrade Sandile.
Comrade Kgosientsho, thank you for that. Let me start by congratulating the minister for the presentation, but also for the work they have done as the department in our country. I have a few maybe comments and questions. One, he speaks of 16 countries that have challenges with electricity, which are in Africa. Are we assisting them in any way with electricity, firstly? But even if we are not, they do have minerals themselves which can be used to generate electricity. Are we then on the side assisting them to beneficiate such that they can generate electricity for themselves? I think this is important in the sense that it can reduce the number of those from particularly Africa that want to come to South Africa. Then the issue of rurality of KZN. I'm in KZN, one of the branches at Kgosientsho. But the rarity of KZN makes one wonder how much movement has been done in terms of allowing people to have their own solar without fearing what policy would say. Are there clear policies on that? Then the third part is we've transported coal, and I've seen that particularly in and around Richards Bay. What is this that these countries to which we transport coal are doing that will make them to be less negatively impacting the climate and the pollution generally. If they have a certain technology, why are we not taking that technology and use it instead of sending coal? Because I think that would be part of beneficiation and decarbonizing, if they are decarbonizing in one way or another. But also the centrality of electricity, I think from the presentation was clear. Yes, there are 6 priorities that the African National Congress has put, but would it be wrong to put electricity and its improvement as a separate priority in itself? Because as you have correctly said, any movement, any energy, and any improvement in our economy at micro and macro level needs this electricity. So why are we not prioritizing it and putting it on its own as a priority, not as part of the other 6 that I'm speaking of? I know it doesn't exist in the inclusive economy. At micro and macro level needs this electricity. So why are we not prioritizing it and putting it on its own as a priority, not as part of the other 6 that I'm speaking of? I know it doesn't exist in the inclusive economy.
Comrade Sandile, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I don't know.
I'm going to move to Comrade Katu Mashau. Please unmute and go ahead.
Good evening, comrades. First of all, thank you to the Minister for the presentation. I just have one clear question to the Minister. I'd just like to find out. Hello? Hello? Good evening, comrades. I just have one clear question to the Minister. I'd just like to find out. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We can.
I'd just like to find out from the Minister what this means for the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, because this is a just, as we're proceeding towards a just energy transition in the country, I'd just like to find out what, for example, load reduction, what does that mean for the Just Energy Transition Plan? What does that mean for jobs that are being lost in the energy sector, and how are they going to rebuild this? Thank you. Country. I'd just like to find out what, for example, load reduction, what does that mean for the Just Energy Transition Plan? What does that mean for jobs that are being lost in the energy sector, and how are they going to rebuild this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Katu. We're going to go to Commissar Hoshi Kaunda. Please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. Let me welcome the submission made by Comrade Ramokgopa. I'm going to ask quickly. Yes. Can you hear me? Thank you, Comrade Chair. Let me welcome the submission made by. There is an echo, Comrade Chairperson. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, okay, sure. I said let me welcome the submission made by Comrade Ramokgopa, and in that, I'm going to ask a very pedestrian question. It happened that I attended a public meeting in Groblersdal the other day, and there were these old ladies who asked the question to say they don't have electricity now because their meters have been switched off. Now, I realized that there was a time when meters were recoded, and it means they didn't register with ESCOM. Now, there is a challenge with them because they don't have electricity, and I advised the branch of the ANC from a subcommittee there to say take over this issue and please make sure that the old ladies are addressed with regard to this. I just want to find out from Comrade Sputler on what is the turnaround time for recoding meters. It was 18 days ago, and when I spoke to them yesterday, their meters were not recoded, although they have what you call reference numbers. I wanted to pose that question, Comrade Chair. Thank you very much. I just want to find out from Comrade Sputler on what is the turnaround time for recoding meters 18 days ago. And when I spoke to them yesterday, their meters were not recoded, although they have what you call reference numbers. I wanted to pose that question, Comrade Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Koshi. Right on time. When you hear that sound in the background, you must know that your time is up. Comrade Calvin, yes, Calvin Beck, please unmute. Calvin, please unmute.
I'm trying here. Sorry. How do I? Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm just saying that our interest is in energy, mining, and rail. We currently have a local company who can manufacture at a special economic zone in Harrismith solar panels. On the 26th of October on Facebook, there was stated that there's a Chinese company that's going to invest 35 million rand for solar manufacturing. Now, our interest is that how can the minister go about to help these young people? And we also have young people in Tabanshu who are also manufacturing the batteries. And there's an interest for the lithium mine that is there. All of these things that I'm speaking about now is available. How do we impart into the economy? We also, like I said, we're also into rail on the old rolling stock of Transnet. And currently we can get opportunities, chrome, coal, and lithium. How do we go about? Where is the touch point that we can do? But my concern is this one of the Chinese that are bringing 35 million rand, as we have a young man who can open up at a special economic zone in Harrismith, can open up his own manufacturing solar plant in South Africa. He just needs some funding. That is our interest. Thank you, Minister. Of the Chinese that are bringing 35 million rand, as we have a young man who can open up at a special economic zone in Harrismith, can open up his own manufacturing solar plant in South Africa. He just needs some funding. That is our interest. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Calvin. Right. The next hand is Tebogo. Tebogo Bula.
Good evening, comrades. I just have one question relating to the IRP. It entails that most of our future generation comes from renewables, mainly solar, PV, and wind. But with regards to how the minister has indicated that renewables don't have a very high capacity factor, and cases such as nuclear and or gas have a higher capacity factor than renewables. Why are we shifting towards renewables? Because we have such a diverse climate in cases whereby it's not going to be necessarily sunny the entire year. And as much as we might be developing batteries, we would now be developing two projects. Whereas if we would have chosen a path that has a greater capacity factor, such as nuclear, we would have less work to do. So that is my question. Why are we moving more towards renewables rather than situations whereby we have a higher capacity factor? We have chosen a path that has a greater capacity factor, such as nuclear, we would have less work to do. So that is my question. Why are we moving more towards renewables rather than situations whereby we have a higher capacity factor?
Thank you, Tebogo. I'm going to take the remaining hands up until Dr. Confidence Moloko, so that we can give the minister some time to respond. If we stick to time, we should, around past, have taken all the hands so that the minister can then respond with closing remarks. So the next hand is Elias Toka. Please unmute and go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair of the session, and good evening, the presenter, Dr. Ramokgopa. I would like just to ask the minister the question based on the general policy and strategy from his presentation. Actually, I want to understand what are the key pillars of the government's current strategy to enhance South Africa energy security. That is the one that is based on the general policy and strategy. And the second one is the economic impact and the productivity, as he was actually giving the presentation on the part of the lack of the rural coverage in the urban area, where he was actually, where he mentioned 3 to 5 coverage rates. So from the rural areas. So I just wanted to understand as how does the improved energy security related into a higher economy productivity in terms of creating jobs for maybe those who are staying in the rural areas. Thank you very much, Chairperson. How does the improved energy security related into a higher economic productivity in terms of creating jobs for maybe those who are staying in the rural areas? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Comrade Elias. The next hand that I'm going to take is going to be Comrade Mondli. Please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. Comrade Chair, we are
Comrade
a small project looking into bringing in a gigafactory that will manufacture lithium ion. Yes, Chair. Can you hear me, Chair?
A small project looking into bringing in a gigafactory that will manufacture lithium ion. Yes, Chair.
Yes, we can hear you, my brother. Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed where you left off. You muted yourself. Please unmute. Comrade Mondli, please unmute. You muted yourself. I think he's struggling to unmute. I don't know if it's on my side or his side. We'll come back to him. Now go to Comrade Katlego. Please unmute and proceed.
Blessed evening. I hope that you are all well. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramokgopa.
Comrade Katlego.
Yes, Chairman, can you hear me?
Please unmute and proceed. Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. I don't know what's wrong with that line. Let me go to Comrade Dorothy Biletsa, yes, Dorothy Mabiletsa. Please unmute.
Yes, thank you so much. Minister, thank you for the presentation. Given the widespread impact of cable theft
Comrade
on
Dorothy.
households, yes, I have
Unmute.
yeah. Yes, thank you so much. Minister, thank you for the presentation. Given the widespread impact of cable theft on households, yes, I have
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah.
Oh. Comrade Dorothy, we could hear you. You muted yourself.
Yeah, but should I?
Please unmute and proceed.
Yes, I have unmuted. Do you hear me now?
Yes, I can
I
hear
don't
you.
know whether it's my side or
We can hear
Comrade
okay.
Dipuo Peters.
Okay, let me
We
just
can hear
repeat
you.
then.
Yeah.
Okay, I was saying, given the widespread impact of cable theft on households, schools, and small businesses, often living communities without power for several days, what concrete steps are being taken to strengthen prevention, improve response times, and ensure accountability in affected areas? Thank you. Often living communities without power for several days, what concrete steps are being taken to strengthen prevention, improve response times, and ensure accountability in affected areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Dorothy. That was precise. Comrade Dipuo Peters.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. I want to take this opportunity to also thank Comrade Sputler for the presentation and also for enlightening us further on what his plans are. But I just wanted to find out, whilst I know that some of the things that I might raise are going to be bordering on the responsibilities of mining, but I think it is important because they have a bearing on our energy architecture going forward. But I just wanted to find out, Minister, the Southern African power pool, does it still exist? And is there still this notion in the region that all these countries, for them to develop their own power generation capacity, they need offtake agreements with Eskom? Because the challenges of the region dependent on Eskom also creates a further problem and a burden on Eskom, because Eskom needs to be available for every country in the region. But also, Minister, I haven't heard you say anything about gas on the energy mix. But I wanted to find out, there was initiatives to extract gas on this, is it southwestern? Yeah, southwestern coast of South Africa. Is that initiative still on? And the agreement or the working together with Namibia, because apparently that pipeline is connected with the Kudu Gas initiative in Namibia. But also, Minister, I just wanted to find out, is there still an intention by government to extract shale gas? I think I'll raise it as short as it is. Then also, Minister, I just wanted to find out, is there still an intention, Minister, by government to extract what happened to the regional, I think I'll raise it as short as it is, services, the rest. Then also, because it is one
Sorry,
of the
Comrade
areas
Dipuo Peters, I'm going to have to cut you because your time is up.
Okay. what happens to the regional the rates? Because it's one of the areas that okay.
I apologize, Comrade Dupuo. I'm just trying to be fair and equitable in how I share time. So I think the minister got the questions. We're going to go to Comrade Caesar. Please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Comrade
Caesar.
Am I audible?
Caesar Njigelani.
Yes, sir, I've unmuted. Shall I proceed?
Please unmute.
Kifi, we can hear, I can hear him very well.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kgosientsho. Look, let me just proceed.
Yes.
Okay, Comrade Sputler, thanks very much. Your input was long overdue. In any case, well, the first issue I would like to emphasize rides on Comrade Dupuo's input around gas, but I'm emphatic on the fact that shouldn't we be consistent on diversity of technologies and systems? What I have in mind is micro and mini grids, which have been introduced of late, which I hope could complement what ESCOM does. And also not to forget the fact that technologies such as waste to energy, pump storage, as well as gas, as it has been highlighted, are equally important. And obviously, it would be helpful to stick in energy efficiency as well, much as it's not about generating an extra watt or megawatt, but energy efficiency is equally important. The role of municipalities, I think, is equally important, and it would be helpful if you could make a comment on that, particularly on possible linkage with mini and micro grids. The last area is the integration of economic and social needs. Much as it is appreciated, you did allude to some social needs, but the issue of affordability becomes very, very crucial, particularly for the poor. So it would be, quite helpful that much as the policy and the programs are to ensure economic growth, but the balance with social needs is important. Thanks very much. For the poor, so it would be, quite helpful that much as the policy and the programs are to ensure economic growth, but the balance with social needs is important. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Caesar. That was right on time. I'm going to take the second last hand, Dr. Moloko. You can unmute and go ahead.
I hope that I've unmuted. Am I audible?
Dr. Confidence Moloko.
Hello, can you hear me?
Chair, we can hear Doc very well, at least on my side.
Okay.
I hope that I've unmuted.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, no, thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Chair, we can hear Doc very well, at least on my side.
Something is whatever that has been said. What I just wanted to know is I've listened. Thank you very much for the presentation. I've listened very carefully to the presentation, and the question that comes into my mind that I would like the minister to answer is that the plans and programs that have been presented to us, I find them to be at odds with ANC and Congress movement policies, especially the economic policy and the energy policy. For example, the main cost of the electricity comes as a result of wanton privatization of state-owned entities, which do not only affect ESCOM, but affects other state-owned entities, which in fact are the silverware of the people, and the only means that is there for us as the people of South Africa and the ANC to own the greater part of the economic base of the country. Now, I would like to know as to why, especially some of the policies that are coming from out of the National Treasury that are being implemented are at odds with the policies of the ANC. When the people that we have sent into government, we have sent them on an ANC ticket. The second question that I would like to know is, if when we were at the ANC Lekgotla in 2023 in January, there was a decision that was taken that load shedding has got to be ended before the beginning of December 2023, so as to make sure that we are not going to lose the elections and we are able to service our people very well and improve their quality of life. That has not happened. When that resolution was taken, it was said that coal has got to be looked at because it is the backbone of energy generation that is responsible for carrying the energy baseload. Now, I do not remember anybody holding account, the people who have deployed in government accountable for failing to stop load shedding. What is your response to that? Thank you. Carrying the energy baseload. Now, I do not remember anybody holding account, the people who have deployed in government accountable for failing to stop load shedding. What is your response to that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Confidence Moloko. I'm going to take the last hand, which was part of the hands that I noted. But because of the challenges on my side, I think there was a delay. That is Comrade Katlego. Please unmute and pose your question.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Comrade Katlego, please unmute.
Yes, I've admitted, Chair. So I had the privilege of being part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, visiting the United States of America. So I was able to see the gigafactory of Tesla, and that employed over 12,000 people in one factory. So I just wanted to understand the rollout plan for electric vehicles in South Africa, and with my contacts in the US, like Tesla, how can they come and manufacture those vehicles in a province like Northwest, having the highest youth unemployment rate in South Africa? Thank you. I just wanted to understand the rollout plan electric vehicles in South Africa, and with my contacts in the US, like Tesla, how can they come and manufacture those vehicles in a province like Northwest, having the highest youth unemployment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, comrades, because of time, we can't take all hands, but we appreciate the contributions that have been made so far. We're going to invite Dr. Spudla Ramokgopa to respond to some of those questions that were posed and comments. And I just like to add my two questions, Dr. Ramokgopa, if you would allow me. My question has to do, when you showed us a slide that sort of predicts the future demand, it sort of spoke from an industry perspective. So you could see, what minerals are going to be needed for what purpose, EVs, batteries, and all of that. But do we have a determination in terms of population growth and the notion of urbanization? Because clearly there exists some correlation between the growth of the population and its migration to urban areas and the need for electricity, right? And then the last question has to do with in order to achieve the plans that you have in mind, is the state organized in a way that would produce those prospects, in a way that will be able to produce those outcomes that you are seeking? And if not, what kind of rearrangement has to happen in the state for us to be able to effectively implement that plan and produce the kind of outcomes that are predicted in the presentation? Thank you, Dr. Ramokgopa. You can respond to the contributions by comrades.
Thank you very much, Comrade Gifi, and thanks to comrades for those questions, and some of them were really helping us to rethink some of the approaches that I was sharing with you. Maybe just to say the following, comrades, is that the slides will be shared with you. I didn't want to hog the platform because I really wanted to have enough opportunity for comrades to raise questions and also critique what I was sharing with you. So I didn't want to go beyond 7. So you'll see in the presentation that is shared with you how we're dealing with load reduction, how we're dealing with the issues of municipalities and municipal debts, but also dealing with what Comrade Sandile raised, is the issues of the distributed grids. By that I mean localized production of electricity. So we're using also the microgrids approach. We'll be launching the first phase of this intervention of microgrids. We will be in Limpopo, Musina, Comrade Sisa. So we're using the latest technology because it's cheaper. The unit cost of connection is a bit more agile, is faster to connect, is greener, and also it's going to end up cheaper from a capital rollout point of view, but cheaper in terms of the electricity that is generated because it's a hybrid solution of battery and PV. Of course, there's going to be much later. They'll be grid tied, but we think 80% of their energy needs will be met from that solution. So maybe to Comrade Sandy and Comrade Sisa, just on the issue of microgrids, we're moving in that direction, and we're targeting the rural hinterland. So one of the things that we need to convey when we go to these spaces, and that's the first thing we did when we went to Musina and the 2 villages, is to educate the people, because they think that that's a solution for the poor, when in fact the most industrialized countries in Europe, those are the solutions they're using. So I think we're going to invest a lot in ensuring that communities get to appreciate and understand this intervention. And then to Kevin Beck, and also to Mondli Mkunu, I heard a bit of what Mondli was saying, Kevin. Their questions are similar because theirs are more specific, and I really like these conversations. I'm happy, comrades, that we're coming out for comrades not just to ask questions, but also to say, look, this is what we're offering. This is who we are. We might be small, but we're looking for the opportunities. So I'm happy, Comrade Kevin and Comrade Mondli. Just go on. There's a colleague of mine, Kutlwano Huma, through your friends, has given you his email address. And this also applies to other colleagues, comrades on the line. When there's opportunity, you are saying you really want to introduce yourself, we'll alert you when we come to your area and/or invite you to meet with the teams. I think it's important that we are deliberate in this encounter. So one of the things that I find extremely unfortunate, Comrade Defense, is that more often we are very shy to say who we are. So I am very direct. We're here to extend opportunities to everyone to the extent that we can. So this is your government. So we will share with you, and it's open to everyone. I want to emphasize, even if you want to invite me or the department to come and meet with you, grouping. When I say grouping, it might be in a particular province, region, business people, we do this publicly. We are not going to shy away. Of course, these opportunities are open to everyone. So I'm sure that Kevin and Mondli would like to share more, and others, please share with Kuan. And then to the question of Sandile and Comrade Dipuo Peters, yes. First is that the South African Power Pool exists. Sandile, the South African Power Pool is a platform of regional cooperation in relation to electricity interconnectivity. We are connected to most of the countries in SADC, so we do supply to Namibia, to Lesotho, to Eswatini, to Botswana, to Zimbabwe, to Zambia, to Mozambique. We are receiving from Mozambique, and in fact, we are providing the smelter in Mozambique called Mozart. So, Sistipuo, yes, it's still the South African Power Pool is still alive. If anything, we are recapitalizing it. So we are building the transmission lines so that we are able to support their economic development. So, Sandy, one of the things that the SAPP is meant to do is that a lot of our neighboring countries, they don't have the sovereign balance sheet to support the kind of investments that are required on greenfields electricity generation project. So they really rely on South Africa. So if you look at our IRP, and maybe to Kgosientso's point, is that it's meant to also support the region. So we're adding, now we're producing, it's about 60 gigawatts, if you like 60,000 megawatts of installed. And by 2039, we are going to grow that to 152 gigawatts. So we're going to grow this 2.5 times. The South African economy alone won't be able to absorb it, even when we compute the population growth. So we are looking to support the region. For the region to be able to beneficiate their minerals, they're going to require sustainable and reliable electricity supply. So we're going to support them. And I want to link this with an important question that Comrade Tebogo Bula raised in relation to the capacity factor of renewable energies. Maybe, I mean, of course, it's in the nature of the pressure of time. What I didn't have an opportunity to expand on. One is that we are not abandoning coal. So coal continues to be the mainstay. We're adding to Comrade Dipuo's point. I did make the point we're adding 16,000 megawatts of gas. We're adding 5.2 megawatts, 5.2 gigawatts or 5,200 megawatts of nuclear, with the possibility of increasing that nuclear share to about 10,000 megawatts over that period. But the point I was making, Comrade Tebogo, is that the sources of primary energy that are seeing the highest growth, it is that of renewables, but we are not abandoning coal. And it also answers the question that Sandile raised. Yes, a lot of these countries are using coal. I mean, I've been to Japan on a few occasions. So what they are doing in order to reduce the emissions, they've got new technology that helps them to co-fire ammonia with coal, and then it brings down the NOxes and SOxes and the CO2 emissions. When we were there on a state visit with the president, this chap, one of the biggest conglomerates in the world, they said to the president, if you don't want coal, give it to us. We want it. We are going to use it, because they say they've got this technology. So these are some of, if you look at the RP, Comrade Sandy, is that it's got a provision to say that we must do a demonstration plant on clean coal utilization and storage. The Council of Geoscience has moved in that area. We've already started with the pilots. I think it's in Kendall, Grootvlei, I think. So we're going to a point of commercialization, but there are also commercial uses of these solutions in other parts of the world. So yes, we're going to use it. And to Katu's point, whilst I did say we are going to use coal, we are not detracting from the just energy transition. So the just really there, Katu, is not just about the emissions. It's about the socio-economic impact of the transition. So if you look at Komati, we closed the power station there. We decimated the town of Komati. It doesn't exist anymore in economic terms. We don't want to commit the same mistakes. So we must front load opportunities. By that, I mean, before you decommission or shut down a power station, if you have to, you must ensure that the impact is employment neutral at the West. By that I mean the number of jobs that gets to be lost as a result of the shutting down must be replaced somewhere in that space, in that economy, and it must be of the same value and same reward. So that's the work that we are doing, and that's going to inform some of the actions we are going to take going forward. The just energy transition also means, Comrade Katu, that we have to ensure that we achieve universal access. So you should do away with this thing called load reduction. Like I said, the slides are there. We'll end load reduction. We did commit the next 12 months. Load reduction really is an isolated downstream, a localized infrastructure challenge that is associated with the capacity of the distribution infrastructure. So we're rolling that out across the country. So it's something that is going to receive our attention. Commissar Kaunda, yes, the turnaround of this should be around 48 hours. Can you bring that to our attention, Comrade Huma there in the office is here, is left the email, just communicate with him. We'll attend to that. And that applies to other areas. If comrades wanted to say something because of the limitations of time you couldn't, please share that with us going forward. And then Comrade Toga, yes, the pillars of this strategy is to enhance energy security, make sure that we are self-reliant as a country. We've got sufficient headroom of electricity supply that is going to enable us to grow the South African economy and also achieve universal access. And then on the back of this, we did indicate that we also want to industrialize. And then, Comrade Mama Village are absolutely correct. One of our biggest challenges is the issue of cable theft. We're rolling out a platform that's going to help us to using the latest technology to detect any interference with our infrastructure. Of course, it's going to take an inordinate amount of time to roll it across the network, but ESCOM has started. But I think it will be important that there's an appreciation by communities that we have to achieve this together. In many instances, as most of us will know here, some of these culprits are known. So there's a hotline that we have established. So we really are encouraging communities to work with us. So yes, Comrade Mavile, there's technology that we are deploying to help us to address this situation. Comrade Peter's absolutely right. What has been happening in the country is that there's been a concerted and coordinated effort by some forces to undermine our ability to exploit our endowments. So we're always dragged to the courts, objections with regards to exploration. We lost some of these investments. They just gone across the river to Namibia. The fines are enormous. I mean, you have seen that with these fines that they've been confirmed, Namibia will be the fastest growing economy. At least by all accounts, from some quarters, the suggestion is that it will be the fastest growing economy on the continent, at least in the region. And it's because they are going to exploit those endowments. The gas finds, they're very significant, and they are exploiting them. I was in Mozambique last week. They are beginning to commercialize the exploitation of their resources. The gas finds are huge, almost rivaling Qatar. And we know that there's domestic gas here, and we have taken to the courts to undermine our ability to exploit our endowments. Now, I'm not suggesting that we must shirk our obligation to the environment, but we must always present a package that shows how we're going to alleviate the adverse impacts to the environment. But we reserve the right to exploit our own endowment. We have accepted as cabinet that these forces, some of whom just ideologically opposed to these energy sources, are using our own laws. So they're not inventing any law, they're using our own laws to challenge us. So we decided that we resolved that there must be an expedited process of how you evaluate these objections so that our right to exploit our endowments is not taken away from us. Shale gas, the regulation, what was outstanding, Comrade Dipo, was regulations from water. Water has released the regulations. Department of Forestry and Fisheries will release the regulations, and Minister Mantashe will come out and say something about shale gas. And comrades, we have seen it. This is like hydraulic fracking. You are breaking the rocks underground to release the gas that is captured there. The issue from an environmental point of view, which is real, is contamination of groundwater, but there are solutions to ensure that we mitigate that. You can see it's a big part of the American energy complex. That's what Trump is trumping, to say that they have a right to exploit their resource. In fact, my counterpart in the US is a well-known, very rich, wealthy businessman. He made his money from fracking, shale gas. So we're going to exploit that, Comrade Tipu. And then to Brasisa, I've made the point on microgrids, the role of municipalities. So we say that there shouldn't be unintended consequences of liberalization, new generation capacity, undermining the ability of municipalities to generate their revenue. But also that we know that municipalities are ailing. You'll see in the completeness of the presentation, municipalities are owed collectively close over 450 billion rands, and in return they owe ESCOM just over 102 billion rands. So it's an existential problem, but we found a way of resolving it. In the slides I shared with you, you'll see there's something called the distribution agency agreement. It's to capacitate municipalities with the engineers, the right skills to do mapping of energy demand, replenish and refurbish the infrastructure, roll out that infrastructure, roll out the smart meter and the smart meter communication platform, secure their revenue streams, and make sure that municipalities are liquid going forward, and they are able to reallocate that revenue to support the social infrastructure rollout. Comrade Moloko, no, I presented to the NEC on the steps to end load shedding. So you can't end load shedding by decree. You had to fix the machines. We had to go in and fix the machines. Comrade Eno gave us 252 billion rands to fix this. It took time to fix. But all of you on the platform, you know that we went into elections with 6 months of no load shedding because of the intervention we made. We had a blip, I think, early this year of about three days, and not 24-hour cycle, but in total number of hours, it's about 8 hours. I'm confident that this thing will be behind us. In fact, if you ask me, we've made tremendous strides. All that we're doing now is to resolve load reduction. We achieved our objective much earlier than what we shared with cabinet, with the NEC and also cabinet. So we did address it. And like I said, I mean, it can be ended by decree. We needed to work on these machines to make sure that we are able to get it right. On the issues of the SOEs, I'll speak only on the ones in our stable. ESCOM is not privatized. The state is still the sole shareholder. We're introducing the National Transmission Company. South Africa is a subsidiary of ESCOM, and the ESCOM will be the 100% shareholder. So it means by extension, is a South African public that is owning NTCSA. Transmission is a natural monopoly. You are not going to relinquish it. So that's the confirmation I give to everyone here. There's no intention also to privatize ESCOM. On the issues that Comrade Barbara is doing, what he's doing there is concessioning, is to bring private sector liquidity to help us to address the issues of the revamp and modernization of the ports. So it's an open secret that our balance sheet is weak. The fiscal matrix has deteriorated. We have no headroom from a borrowing perspective. Our debt to GDP is 77%. And we said this as part of our fiscal strategy, it must peak at 77%. But we know private sector has got that liquidity. We have used that model. Drive on the entry to KZN from Johannesburg. Huge improvements there. Some of them are SANRAL, some of them is the concessions that are there. The state is still owning that asset. The state will determine the length of the concession, and then the private sector, out of the toll fees, they are able to reinvest because they've got obligations to keep the quality of the road. And when they return it, they must return it at a state that in a state that the state would have determined how it looks like. and it gets to be reverted back to the state. So it's a model that exists. It's found to be working resilient. Essentially, we're using other people's money to help us to meet a public good. Of course, in some instances, there's a user pay principle. That's what it is. Otherwise, there will not be any development because the state's balance sheet has deteriorated over time. And then, Comrade Katleho, yes, you are right, my brother. We know that the electric vehicle era is here, or the hybrid vehicle is here. If anything, Comrade Parks, I'm sure, will come and present to you. We've got many suitors. You've seen BYD launch their latest model. They reckon that they could be selling up to 20,000 of that model per annum in the next year going forward and increasing. And they've also expressed an appetite to consider production here. I think Comrade Parks can speak with authority. And one of the options that are being explored rather with the more established OEMs in the country, your Germans and Japanese that are here, because capacity utilization of some of the factories in the more established OEMs in the country is going down. It's to dedicate the product that it helps in maintaining capacity utilization, but most importantly in keeping the job. That our colleagues who might be losing jobs as a result of these OEMs, our traditional OEMs losing market share. Now you are hybridizing, if you like, for lack of better word, production at the various factories, certain lines, if you like, leased out to some of these companies so that we produce here. And then associated with that, Comrade Katleho, is to roll out the recharging infrastructure. Again, that's another opportunity for some of the players in the country. And really we want Black people Africans to get these opportunities. And that's why I've opened myself up as I conclude to say that comrades who are here, I mean, it might take time to get to you, but Comrade Kutlwano share with us, especially those of you who are seeing opportunities, you want to see how best we can exploit them. We are happy to come and share with you. And then in some instances, we'll be doing national tour, moving from one province to the other. We'll make the announcement when you are in your space. I think coming through physically to a venue, we'll have much more time. I'll be with ESCOM, I'll be the National Transmission Company, South Africa. We'll share with you what these ambitions are. Oh, and the last point I forgot is that I'm not sure if I said it in my main presentation, is that we're working with the IDC and the DBSA, because finally this must be funded. What Monty is raising and also what Kevin was raising must be funded from somewhere, and a lot of these players don't have the money, and I'm saying that respectfully. So we want to come with a government outfit, all of us, to engage with you and see how best we can exploit these opportunities so that we change the structural makeup of the South African economy on the back of this energy transition, and we don't commit the mistakes of the past. And as the lights are on, people are at work, we have transformed the economy, and more people are prosperous. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Comrade Gifi. On the back of this energy transition, and we don't commit the mistakes of the past. And as the lights are on, people are at work, we have transformed the economy, and more people are prosperous. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Comrade.
Dr. Ramokgopa, I really can't thank you enough for making the time and giving us the very sound, very productive, very useful, very insightful presentation. I think in your closing remarks, you've given us two homeworks, if I've heard you correctly. One is that we need to organize a session with Comrade Parkstown, who's the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, just to elaborate further on some of the issues that you touched on that are under his ambits. You've also given us a homework in not so many words to organize a physical session wherein you can come with all of the key entities that you work with so that we can give people information. This is what the space is about. It's about empowering people with knowledge. It's about conscientizing people. But if there's also an opportunity to plug them into other opportunities, we're happy to provide the space, and we'll definitely take up those offers and ensure that if not by the end of the year, early next year, we do organize a physical session. The form and content we can discuss later, wherein people can come and interact with you for a much lengthier period. But we truly, truly appreciate what you've given us today. It's just unfortunate that we don't have enough time. But we've shared the presentation in the chat room. We'll also share it via the emails that you have shared so that you can engage some of the content that the minister did not get time to speak on. We truly, truly thank you, Comrade Ramokgopa, for today. I think this was very useful. In fact, our sequencing was quite correct because some of the issues that you touched on reinforce some of the ideas that came up since we started this series on the economy. So with that being said, we'd also like to apologize to you, the audience. I know that some of these conversations are quite important. They are quite personal to some of us. The unfortunate thing is that we can never have enough time to have these conversations. And I think it's therefore important that we also take this conversation back to our structures, back to our branches, so that we can inform people. Because at the end of the day, the responsibility of being a leader of society includes being able to take complex matters and present them to the people in the simplest form. It therefore means that you and I, who are part of this conversation, need to go back and internalize this presentation that the minister gave us. We are going to share this recording on our YouTube channel. Go and watch it again, so that when we go and engage people on the ground, we're able to simplify the information and empower them with knowledge and reassure them that the ANC is not sitting and doing nothing about the challenges confronting them. There's actually concrete plans and concrete work that is being done, but also the results that we've seen in terms of load shedding and the electricity crisis that we've experienced over the years did not come out of the blue. They did not come through prayer. They did not come, of course, prayer is important, but they did not come through wishful thinking. There was actually a plan. There was people, competent people, who were implementing a particular plan. And that plan is still unfolding. And we need to therefore guarantee them that we are doing something to reactivate the economy, to reactivate productivity, to reactivate growth and economic recovery. It may take some time, but be rest assured that at the end of the day we'll win, because we cannot afford to fail. Because to fail is to really let our people down. So we truly, truly appreciate your presence, your engagements. Please stay tuned for the next episode. In the next series that we're going to do, we'll be discussing matters around the state. So there is a research done by Mistra, and they've produced a publication entitled The State of the South African State, which essentially speaks about the South African state, its theoretical underpinnings, the challenges with fully realizing our goal of being a developmental state, how we can better integrate the state, better planning, better macro organization and micro organization of the state, It touches on all levels of the state and all the arms, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, as well as the 3 levels of government. So we really implore you to visit their website, and if you can get yourself a copy of that research publication, please do so, because in the next set of engagements that we'll be discussing, we are hoping to get the authors of some of the ideas that are presented in the publication, which is a compilation of papers around the state. So we are hoping to get them to come present. So if you can get the book beforehand, at least it will empower you to engage. In fact, I should have shared the link to their website. But if you search Mistra on Google and you look at their publications, especially their recent latest publications, you'll find one entitled The State of the South African State. If you can get that, please do, so that when we get into that segment of conversations, you at least are better prepared to engage with the presenters. Do follow us on our social media pages to find out about our future events and how you can be part of them. As I said, this is going to be posted on YouTube. By tomorrow, this time it should be there. So do follow us on our YouTube channel, subscribe. These conversations, lastly, comrades, are part of knowledge production. They are part of a repository of ANC's thinking for prosperity, wherein when future generations ask, how did we overcome the challenge of load shedding? They should be able to go to some of these conversations and be able to refer to say, okay, this was the thinking, these were the main actors at the time. So we must not take this conversation lightly and think we're just gathering to dialogue for the sake of pushing time. No, we are actually building a strong archive that future generations, even some of us in the future, can refer to deal with the challenges that would be faced at the time. So I just want to let you know that by being part of these public dialogues, you are part of a very important movement, a very important movement and initiative within the liberation movement of actually archiving the thinking of the time and reclaiming our position as a leader of society, even in the space of the battle of ideas. Because if we don't communicate our ideas, people may tend to think that we are no longer a thinking organization, whereas there's a lot of thinking, a lot of progressive thinking that is being done, which we just need to archive and be able to have it secured for prosperity. So that for posterity, so that future generations can refer to it. So with that being said, good night, comrades. We'll see you next time on a Monday, same platform, same time, a different conversation. Thank you very much.